There's so much conflicting information on the Edelbrock versus the Carter series carburetors. So today we're going to tear these apart, see what the differences are between the two. So let's dig into it. So there's a lot of wild claims about both of these brands of carburetors, and that's what we want to look into today is, will the common things cross over? Will the rebuild kits work in both carburetors? We know it works obviously in the Edelbrock, but will it work in the different styles of competition series Carter carburetors that are out there? Will the metering rods and jets work? Really, really crazy some of the things that I've read on jet heights within the Carter carburetors. There's multiple 4 or 5 different lengths of rods, and I don't doubt that in some instances that's probably true. We're only going to look at the competition series Carter carburetors. Now, these weren't the factory installed Carters that were on a lot of different year makes and models in the old days. Only going to look at that competition series because it's the most fair comparison between the two. When you look at the old AFB carburetors that were out there, there was a lot of different options. I've seen estimates that were 400 or 500 different variants of the Carter, and that's probably not inaccurate. Carter made quadrajets. A lot of people don't know that or realize that Carter, when Rochester couldn't keep up with production, whatever the case may be, I don't know what the reasoning behind it was. GM had Carter, and they were listed or they were cast right onto the body of the carburetor, plus all the monojet, 2 barrels. There's hundreds of variants of that Carter carburetor. We're only going to concentrate on the competition series because I think those are still out there and available in the marketplace, but there's a lot to talk about here. So what we're going to do is we're going to tear all 3 of these down. Now, I've got some different variants of the Carter because I think it's a good way of looking at it. This is the 600 series carburetor. It's the 9605 part number, and this is the 9635, which is a 625 CFM. Now, they're a little bit different. We're going to talk about that here in just a quick second, but Edelbrock has the same variants of both of these carburetors, and I'll show you that right now. Now, real quickly on these Carters, if you look, this 600 is more along the lines of just a regular Performer Series carburetor. It's got the weighted air valve in it. It's very easy to see. It doesn't have the air valve secondary like the new AVS2 and the old Thunder Series Edelbrocks had, but these has a variant that's a little bit different. If you notice here, it's got the vented tube in it for the emission side of things. Now, the Edelbrock 1400, which is a 600 CFM carburetor, has that in it as well. So we're just going to verify with that between that variant in the 625 and the standard 600 that everything's the same, that the metering rods and jets are the same, the gaskets are all the same, and that's what we're going to look at. But I just wanted to quickly point that out, just in case somebody said I didn't look at the variants enough between these carburetors. We're going to look at all 3, the standard 1406 Edelbrock, Performer Series carburetor, and this style, and the one that's got that air vent on there for the emission side of things is primarily what it was used for. So now we've got that, we're going to put them all side by side, and then we're going to start tearing them down. Now, one thing we need to talk about first is really what Edelbrock has done to that platform over the years. Now, no knock on Carter, but I don't think back in the day when the Carter competition series was in its heyday that it really had the understanding that Edelbrock has given to that carburetor. Really, one of the biggest advances that they made was in these calibration kits. Now, Edelbrock really took this to the next level and gave the end user the ability to tune in these calibration kits, having a good tuning chart, understanding the steps it took to get to where you needed in the power mode and the cruise mode, having a calibration chart available, having all the rods and jets available so you could make really good fine tuning and really take that carburetor from something that was just kind of right out of the box okay, but really gave you the ability to really fine-tune this. No knock on Carburetor. They had the strip kit from years back, but I just don't think it got enough attention because it just didn't have this level of tuning that was available to it. Now, we've talked about that tuning chart quite a lot over the years, and I'll leave a link to that video if you don't understand how to read that. But that really stepped up the game for Edelbrock and took a really good platform and now gave you the ability to do a lot of great things to it. And you've seen me talk about that quite a bit over the years with the tuning stuff that I've done with it, and keeping all the rods and jets and different nozzle sizes, and keeping all the different metering rods and all the different sizes on hand so we can really fine tune these. Really a benefit of what Edelbrock did to it. No knock on the Carter guys from before, but they just didn't have the knowledge it took and the parts available to tune these carburetors the way they should be. Today what we're going to concentrate on is the rebuild kit to see if the modern Edelbrock 1477 rebuild kit that works with the AVS, the Performer Series, and the new AVS2 carburetors, will that carburetor rebuild kit work for these older Carter carburetors? That's what I think the confusion has come into, and a lot of things that I've seen online that, yes, all these carburetors are absolutely identical. No, they're not identical. The carburetor is better. The Mopar guys typically will give you that one. The float bowl bit were bigger in the older Carter carburetors. The Edelbrock's harder to tune than the Carter was. That one confuses me because the tuning resources really weren't there nearly as good as they are today with the Edelbrock. There's different metering rod sizes, and the lengths of the rods are different in the older Carter carburetors than they are on the Edelbrock. So that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to see, are these carburetors different, and can you use the resources that are available to you today that Edelbrock has to offer? So now that we got that out of the way, let's start tearing these down. Okay, the first thing we're going to start with is the metering rods and the step-up springs, because it's one of the first things you should probably take apart anyway when disassembling this carburetor. So that's the first thing that we're going to take a look at, see if there's any difference in them between the Carter and the Edelbrock, and we're going to know that here very quickly. Okay, now that we've got those assemblies out, the primary concern here is really to see what the difference is between the two different carburetors. And we're going to take a look at the metering rods. Now, I will be very upfront that these two Carters are new to me. I have not had them disassembled, so any surprises we find, we're going to find together. And here's our first one. These are rather crusty and disgusting, with some deposits and some springs that have seen better days. But when you compare the two, they look fairly similar. Now, these are the orange Edelbrock step-up springs. There's really not much coloration on those left, so who knows? And God only knows what happened to this 600 here in the center. But our primary concern is the step-up springs, the pistons, and if these metering rods are the same. So I'm going to throw a set of calipers on all of these, and then we'll just see if they're the same sizes. I'm going to have to clean these Carter ones up a little bit. They're a little disgusting, but we'll kind of go from there, see if they're the same. Somebody didn't love this carburetor that much, or it's been sitting for a while. Hard to say. Okay. We'll take the small end first here on the Edelbrock. .475, and we are the same on the Carter. Now, this is also making the assumption that none of these have been changed. I don't know the backstory to either one of these carburetors. I believe this 1406 I did set back to factory settings. I don't know, so we're just going to have to wing it and see here. Very close. So these two are the same. Don't look like there's any physical difference between these. I'm going to say that they're all the same. They are the same length. That was one of the things that we came up with on the internet, was that there are different lengths. and we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. One thing I am noticing, and I'm going to have to get a magnifying glass out here, is there is some numbers on that one. And there are some numbers on this one, so I'm going to get a view of that and see if they're the same number. If not, it'll tell me a little bit more about where those rods came from and if they're factory or not. So let me get a magnifying glass on that. We'll try it out. Okay, we came to our first little surprise here, and I guess not really, but something that I should have considered. Again, that's a 600 CFM, that's a 625. So the numbers on the metering rods are kind of interesting. On the Edelbrock, it was 7147. On the 600 Carter, it was also a 7147, which makes sense. They're both made in the same facility, or were made in the same facility. This one on the 625 was a 7547, which tells it's a different size, which is why I was getting a different reading on the caliper. Makes perfect sense. The part number is a 1453. This is also a 1453 from Edelbrock. That one's a 1459, which is I think a newer part number. Hopefully you can read that. Probably you can't. Newer part number for the AVS carburetor, doesn't matter. The interesting thing is that they are all stamped on the rod, and I'm going to show you that right now. I think I took some video, maybe I didn't, of that machine, but in Sanford, North Carolina, where the Edelbrock carburetors are made and where these Carter carburetors were made, I saw that machine making rods. They actually make them right here in the U.S. They are not made overseas, offshore somewhere, Mexico, Canada. They're all made right in South Carolina there at the facility. It's kind of very interesting because they actually bend the rod, put the notch in it, notch it out to the sizes, and they will stamp the number in there, which tells me all of those metering rods were made in that facility. Very, very cool to find it, but just one little thing that we saw here. So now we've got that knocked out. I'm going to set these aside, and then let's start knocking the tops off, because I want to see what the jets are on the inside, because it'll also tell us a corresponding number and see how these were tuned. So let's get the tops knocked off next. All right, just for giggles here, I've got the screws out of this. All the linkage is disconnected. Let's see what's ugly on the inside of this. Ugh. Okay, well. Man. We've got some, definitely some issues here. Ugh. This was not very well taken care of or loved. This one might, this one might not make it. Let's continue to tear it down, but I wanted to show you how ugly that was, in case you're interested. Yeah, she's got some issues. We'll talk about those here in a quick second, but I already spotted something pretty interesting in this. So we'll talk about that, but yeah, she's led a pretty disgusting life. Anyway, let's keep tearing these down. Okay, so we got the air horn assemblies off. Other than the really, really ugliness in that 600, not much too different in the 625. It's in pretty decent shape. That one so far looks rebuildable. The 1406 was pretty easy. One thing that I did see as we were taking apart the 600, something very interesting here. This has got what Edelbrock calls the off-road needle and seat. It is a assembly that is spring-loaded. Now it's obviously very filthy. I'll show you this close up so you can kind of take a look at it. But that is very interesting. I didn't know that about the Carters. Again, I'll have to do some research on it because I don't know. Did they all come with that needle and seat? I'm assuming it's going to be the... Oh, good heavens. That is... the pin is frozen. Let's see on the 625 here. And what do you know? That also has the spring-loaded needle and seat. Very interesting. So if you are a Carter guy, and that is something normal, then maybe that's what came in it. Now the Edelbrock needle and seats standard are a little different. They are solid, where the float rides on it, and they offer the off-road needle and seat as an upgrade to give you a little bit more ability to hold pressure. They call it the off-road because it doesn't bounce. It takes out some of the slack, so you're not bouncing the needle off of the seat and causing jumps in pressure and volume into the float bowls. So it's considered an upgrade. They sell it separately. I think the off-road carburetor that Edelbrock has that in there. But that is the standard needle that comes in the Edelbrock carburetors. Very interesting to see. Didn't know that. I'm going to try to get that other one out of there. And I guess we could take a quick peek at that one. Looks like this one's a little bit better service. And it's got the off-road needle and seat. So very interesting. Something I wasn't aware of. But we'll keep tearing down. It looks like that the gaskets are the same between these carburetors. Again, that was the other consideration here, is will the rebuild kit work? Let me clear out some of this mess here. Okay, so the consideration was, is that rebuild kit gasket the same? And it appears that it is exactly the same. So the air horn gasket in the Edelbrock carburetor versus the Carter is identical. It is identical. So you can use the Edelbrock air horn gasket in that carburetor. And just another quick peek at the air horn assemblies here. All pretty much the same. There's really no difference in them interior wise, other than the one with the air canister vent. Very, very similar. That the 600 is absolutely disgusting. And keep finding things I don't like about it. Looks like the accelerator pump got a little boogered up on that one, but to be expected. Again, I don't know anything about these two Carters, so it's hard to say exactly what's been done to them. But everything's looking pretty close to the same here. Even similar markings here. I'm assuming I'll have to consult with Edelbrock that those are dates that they were stamped on there. That says 12/7 of 95. That says 11/28 of 80 something, 84 maybe. It's hard to read it, but I'll have to confirm with those markings from them. But yeah, pretty much the same. Okay, a few weeks ago I did a video on cleaning an intake manifold, and unfortunately the beaker that I had didn't survive that video. It's in 1,000 pieces somewhere. But what I did is I took a smaller one and filled up each one of these water bottles with the same amount. I put 3 of those into each, so they are literally all at the same level. What we're going to do is check that theory that the float bowls are bigger on the Carter carburetors. Don't think that's the case, but we cleaned these out as much as we could. The jets are in there secure. Fortunately, the jets, it looks like, are going to come out of this side on both of these two Carters, which is good considering how disgusting these are. So what we're going to do is we're going to pour the level till it gets all the way up to this side here, which is the transfer slot to go into the other side. That will tell us if there is the same amount of fluid or more or less in each one of these. So let's fill up the Edelbrock. And it's right at the line. That's how much we've got left in that one. We'll fill up this Carter right up to that same line. Oop, just a hair more, not much. And we will fill this one to the same. Same line. Okay, so now let's take a look and see what's left in each one of those 3 bottles, and we will know if there is more liquid in these 2 Carter carburetors. I'm going to get this emptied out, and then we'll look at those. Let's see what the results are here. Edelbrock 600 Carter, 625 Carter, and we will just put these water bottles side by side. And there is absolutely really no noticeable difference. This one's a little bit lower, but I think I filled that one up just a hair too much. So yeah, There is, you can kind of see the level there of everything. So yeah, there is no notable difference. Those are all the same size float bowls. The Carter ones are not bigger than the Edelbrock. It's the exact same size. So we've knocked that one off the list. Now let's get the jets out. Take a look at those. Okay, let's get these jets out. I said, fortunately, these were loose enough, or I got them loose enough. So, try to keep these straight. And we're doing two things here. We're going to look, see what the numbers are on it. Make sure that they have numbers. But importantly, more importantly, is some of the comments were that these are different sizes or different types. So let me finish getting these out. We'll take a look at these close up, and then we'll take a look at some sizes. A little bit of information here. First and foremost, really the most important one is these are all the exact same. The same step is on there, the same thread size. I put all of these, swapped them from the different carburetors. These are the two Carburetors. This is the 600, 625. This is the 1406 Edelbrock. They are all the exact same size. They all screwed in there. Markings are a little different. This one says 400, 400. This one also 400. Little conflicting information on these. Looks like this one says 120, 394, which would make sense. This one, same deal, 120 with a 400. So not sure exactly how the Carter stuff was annotated or marked now that I knock them all out. But not sure how the Carter stuff was annotated as it was done during that time period, but as far as the sizing goes, that's all I was really concerned with, that these would fit into it. So if you're going to use Edelbrock jets into the Carter carburetor, they are going to fit in there just fine, no problem at all. So now we have that sorted out. I'm going to start knocking apart the rest of this, take the boosters out, take the nozzles out, and just kind of see if there's any differences there. Hopefully the 600 will cooperate. Looks like that 625 is in really good condition. So let's do that next. Let's look at a couple of things here. So got the rear boosters out and one of the primaries in all of them. So gasket. So let's see if the gasket matches up. And they do. Let's see this one that came out of there. Remember on these, they're notched, so that way you know you get it on there correctly, and it's not on there cockeyed. Okay, it will go on both ways, but that notch will tell you. And the gaskets are the exact same. Boosters look identical. Let's compare one out of the 1406. Pretty doggone identical. There's the fuel, there's the air reference. These are identical. So now let's take a look at the primary. And these are matching up perfectly. Absolutely perfect. So, gaskets are the same. So we've got that sorted out. Boosters all look the same. Now let's take a look at these air valves. This is the weighted air valve. Obviously the one on the 600 is not going to make it. That carburetor is trashed. Let's see what this one looks like. 221-71 is the number on that one. This one is so corroded over you can't tell. Let's see if this one has a number. 221-71. That's interesting. So these are exactly identical, same shape, everything. This is the one out of the 14. And it works. Let's see if... And it fits and works perfectly. So, all the same. Boosters, weighted air valves, exactly the same. Alright, let's get these nozzles out. I'm not too worried about the sizes on these, but the Edelbrock stamped here with 31. There is the weight in it. I'm concerned about the gasket. Oh man, the 600 just gets worse and worse the more I tear it down. It is... there's not even a lot of parts to be used off of this. I think it's just going to go... All of it's just going to get thrown right into the trash. It's absolutely horrible. Look at this. Look at this nozzle. But gasket is identical. Oh boy, and it does have a weight in it. If I can get it out with all of the gunk that's in here. Let's see if we can knock that out of there. Yeah, that one's probably going to need a little carb cleaner to get out. Alright, our 625 that has a 28 on it. That is good. Again, I'm not worried about the sizing on it, but knowing that the number is on there is actually pretty cool because it just shows consistency. And let's see here. There's our Edelbrock one, and it's identical. Gaskets and everything. So, let's see if we can get the weight out. There is a weight and a check ball. You can see those there. So they were using that same with the Carter of that era. So again, I'm not sure exactly how old this is. I don't know how to read the Carter date codes. I will have to do some more research on that. And maybe reach out to the folks at Edelbrock at the Sanford facility because those folks were doing that carburetor at the time that it was being built. So now that that's confirmed, that those are the same, I'm just going to pop out some idle mixture screws here. Now, the Edelbrock one's a little different. It does have the Torx in it as well. The Carter ones are just blade ends on it. Let's just get one each out here and we'll just quickly compare them. So looks like springs are the same between all of them, and these mixture screws are the same. They're in a little rough shape, but if we remember how to check if there's an edge on it, this one's hard to tell because it is full of garbage. This one's actually in pretty good shape. It's reusable. So the idle mixture screws are identical. Okay, let's take a look at one last little thing here, but it's important. Let's take a look at the size of the throttle plates here. Now I'm just going to measure the primaries, but as I flipped it over here, I started to notice something. Edelbrock has got, I'm assuming these are sub-assembly part numbers, so they know which plates go in which size carburetor, because the 800s and the 750s have different sizes than the 600s. This is stamped with a 2-289. This 600 Carter, oddly enough, 2-289. The 625, 2-289. On the secondary side, 2-281, 2-281, 2-281. So I'm going to make the assumption that all of these are the same size, but let's just take a look, zero this out, and we'll see. Now the primary side is an inch 4.375, I think is the size. So let me get the calipers in here. And inch 4.370, close enough. Not going to squabble over that additional 5 thousandths there. Let's take a look here on the carder. Again, these have the same part number throttle plates in it, so I'm going to make the assumption here. 4.365, close enough. I'm sure I'm off a little bit. And let's take a look at the 625, just for giggles here. 375. So these are all identical. All of the throttle plates are identical, and I am going to make the assumption that all the rears are the same too. Same part number. Everything's the same here. You know, just kind of taking a peek here at the bottom side. The linkages. This was the electric choke carburetor also. I'd taken that off before we started. But everything is the same on these carburetors. There is literally no difference. Now, one thing that we can't look at here, and we may do it with this carburetor here, is you'll remember that we took this old 1406 a year or so ago, and we actually milled the front of this down. I'll leave a link to that video. That was kind of cool. And we can kind of take a peek at how the insides are. I did take some measurements on this, but for the most part, it was just a visual. But we can see the size of the accelerator pump passage here that goes from the pump chamber all the way up. We can measure that. We can take a look at the transfer slots. I'm going to assume they're going to be pretty close. But that's one of the assumptions, as that the 1406 or the Edelbrock carburetors were an updated version of the Carter. I don't know. I would have to do a little bit more research and probably talk to the Edelbrock product manager or engineer on this and see if they could give me any details on it. But for the most part, I think we can make the assumption that all of the relevant things are the same between the Edelbrock and the Carter. So we learned quite a lot here today. I'm a little surprised by some of it. You know, obviously this one being as disgusting it is, but hey, that's what it is. Very sadly that one's gonna, you know, that 600, its life is over with. I may keep a few things off of there, but for the most part, it's done. That 625 is in not bad a shape, but it's not very desirable carburetor with the canister vent breather there. So, you know, it's just hit or miss on it. Very surprised that on the needle and seats that the Carters had the off-road style. You know, Edelbrock doesn't put that standard in the carburetors. Obviously, I'm going to make the assumption anyway that the Carters, that was a standard option for them. Very, very cool. I like that needle and seat. Works very well, but it's also very pricey. You know, the standard ones are obviously probably a little cheaper to manufacture given that they're one piece. So I think we learned enough here. Can I rebuild that 625 with an Edelbrock rebuilt 1477 rebuild kit? Absolutely. I think there's no problem with it at all. The jets, the rods, everything in there favors it. The boosters, all the same. The weighted air valve, all the same. Needle and seats, you name it. All the pertinent information or details of it are the same. So there are some little aspects of it. Again, I would have to talk to somebody at Edelbrock that was around for quite a while, or some of the folks at Sanford, and see what they say about their time there during that manufacturing for the Carter carburetors. So anyway, I hope that gave you a little bit of insight on it. If you're going to try to rebuild a Carter, if it's a competition series, more than likely do a little bit of research on it, but it looks like you're going to have a pretty easy time with tuning and rebuilding. So anyway, I hope that answered any of your questions. If you got any, leave them down below, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. And I guess we will catch you guys on the next one. We'll see you.